Welcome to the Bullpen Show. I'm your host, Austin Alexander, and this is going to be our Lowcountry edition, but also our 9/11 edition of the Bullpen Show. So just want to welcome everybody here. And before we get going, I've got Devin Beckley. He covers a lot of ground for us in the Lowcountry. I saw a lot this week, saw a lot last spring, did a ton of work for us last fall as well. So I just want to bring Devin in. Devin, how are you doing today, sir?
Good. It's exciting to talk about some more baseball in the Low Country and get this thing going again.
It really is. I know you got out and were able to get out a couple nights, intended to get out 3 nights, but sometimes life happens. But you saw a lot of baseball in the process. I was down in the Low Country as well, and we also had Chipper Johnson down there banging around for us. So we'll be able to get to that information in a little bit. If you've been on our website at all over the course of this week, you've seen that we've had a ton of games going on. We've got 162 teams across 4 different leagues. 3 of those leagues were actually playing this week, and of course, we'll talk about the Low Country, but there was also plenty of information coming out of the Upstate and the Greater Rock Hill League. All of that information is on thediamondprospects.com. We put together the recaps from those 3 leagues and tons of baseball that we were able to take in. All that information is on the website, plenty of velocities, plenty of video, of course, the breakdowns from our scouts and kind of talking about what we were able to see. And that's what we're going to get to in just a moment. I mentioned at the very beginning that this is the 9/11 edition, and today, while we're recording this, is the 24th anniversary of 9/11. Now, not everybody remembers that the same as others of us that have a little bit of age on us. I want to quickly tell a story. I was a college baseball coach at the time, and I remember when it happened. On 9/11 that morning, I was sitting in my office a little bit before 8 o'clock, and I was on the phone with another college coach when the first tower was struck, and someone came running in the office and said something about it. And then, of course, the second tower, and we know the story. An interesting story for me personally is that each year, this college baseball coach, he's now at Columbus State. His name is Patrick Collins. He was a Gardner-Webb at the time. Each year, one of us sends each other a text that morning. Now, a lot of years, that might be the only communication we have over the course of the whole year, but for 24 years, we've kept that streak alive and did again this morning. It's just a reminder of what that day was and what it represents. Just another example that our country continues to need prayer for healing all those years later, and other things that are going on across our country as well. So we'll switch from that and quickly get to baseball. One of the things we like to talk about before we get into the teenagers that are playing right now are the guys that came through our state prior to that. And since we talked about, we're going to get into the Low Country, in keeping with that, our Palmetto Pros actually mentioned a couple of guys, are going to mention a couple guys at a school that I was at on Tuesday night from Summerville. One is Cole Messina. Cole Messina is a product of Summerville High School, went to South Carolina, of course, was drafted and was just promoted to AA, so we want to make mention of that. Obviously, he's doing well to get that promotion right here at the end of the season. And then PJ Morlando was the first rounder for the Marlins. PJ just completed his first full season in the Marlins organization and was awarded with an invitation to the Arizona Fall League. Now, for those who may not know what the Arizona Fall League is, it's a pretty big deal. And basically, every organization submits their top prospects, guys that they certainly have big plans for, and they all go out there for a space of time. I think it's a little over a month, and they just, they play against all the other top guys across the sport that haven't gotten to the big leagues yet, or maybe some guys that have gotten a cup of coffee but still have prospect status.
Yep.
And just saw today, Devin, I actually noticed that PJ was listed as the 9th youngest player that's actually going to be in the league. So
Yeah.
kudos to him, and that's a high honor, and hopefully he'll go out there and perform and represent all of us back here in the Palmetto State.
That's cutthroat out there. I know that. So that's, good luck to him for sure. That'll be fun.
Absolutely. And then before we move on to what we saw this week, I just want to mention that the Fall Showcase is November 1st at River Bluff High School. For any guys that, we mentioned Cole Messina, and we're going to talk about a lot of other guys that are committed. If you're listening to this or you got a kid who wants to be seen, that's an opportunity to do that. November 1st, all that information as well is on the thediamondprospects.com on our website. So I'll stop for a moment and kind of pitch it to you, Devin. As I mentioned, you got to get out on Monday and Tuesday. If you could tell folks what you saw on Monday night.
Yeah. I got out to see hand-to-hand academic magnet. Well, I guess Hawks 3 and Magnet 1 or whatever. But it was a couple of younger guys that kind of stood out to me. It's week 1 of a fall league, so there's still a lot of rust going on, I'm sure. But a couple of arms for the Hawks 3 kind of stood out to me. Right-handed pitcher Kellen Marlowe and left-handed pitcher Brendan Mole. They both they had feel around the zone with 2 or 3 pitches, and they did a really good job of just kind of having a mound presence and really attacking the zone and attacking hitters. And that was good to see, especially because these guys are class of 2029. So these are eighth grade. So to have that kind of advanced mound presence and attack the zone, that's something that you kind of appreciate, especially in some younger guys like that.
And that 29 class actually just started their ninth grade season. So
Yeah,
I know a lot of
yeah.
times when they're that young, we haven't really talked a lot
Oh,
about 29s or
it's yeah,
30s.
it's exactly. You gotta, I mean, because you gotta project a little bit because these guys are throwing 72 to 73 miles an hour. So you're not sitting there saying, "Holy cow, 73 miles an hour," but you can watch them play and you can kind of project and see who the dogs are going to be a couple years down the road. And both of them, Marlowe and Mole, both they look pretty good. I was impressed with both of them.
You're exactly right. And you just used a term that is a huge term in scouting, but certainly this time of year for us, and that's projection. So many of
Right.
these young players that are across these leagues, these coaches are doing a great job of getting their youngsters that are in the program on the field and in our leagues. And so, we're getting out, we're seeing guys a little bit younger than we typically would, guys that won't necessarily be popping up on varsity levels
Yeah.
this spring. But it's great for us to be able to get out and see. And projection, like you said, is huge. You're trying to just figure out who moves like a player, who looks like who. It may be a
Yeah.
size, it may be a tool that pops out, but sometimes just kind of who looks the part. And you mentioned a couple guys that I'd seen a little bit as well. You mentioned the Mole kid, and I'll actually skip all the way to Wednesday. I got to see him on Wednesday night, and he pitched for you, and he swung it for me and played center field. And just a kid that obviously looks the part and looks
Yeah,
like he
just
loves to
looks
play
like a
baseball.
ball player.
You and
Yeah.
I saw them, we'd never heard that name before. We saw him on two different nights. Independently, we both wrote him up. And so obviously that kid's doing something right. He caught both of our eyes as a stranger when we walked in the ballpark. On Tuesday night, I was able to cruise into town and headed over to Somerville and Stratford. So that was the Knights in the Green Wave were playing. Most of their players obviously hail from Somerville and Stratford. So I was able to hang out with a couple of good friends. Tony Osterman at Stratford is in his fourth season at the program there. Thane Maness is in his third season at Somerville. And so those are two guys that have worked. Tony Osterman has worked every event that we've ever had, with the exception of when he had to take a brief break for cancer treatment. And Thane Maness has been our bullpen machine guy for a lot of years. So it's good to see those guys lock horns. Somerville's got 4 teams in our league. Stratford's got 3 teams in our league. So tons of players in their program.
Yeah.
Being serviced, and that's the value of the league. When I showed up there for the 6:30 game, about an hour beforehand, he was finishing practice with the other 3 Somerville teams, and that's the beauty of this. It's the one game that we may show up for, but it's the ability to develop and really service your players on the days when
Absolutely.
maybe we're not rolling in to see a game. But I did see a game, and I was able to see a pretty well pitched game on the Somerville side. Started with. And I've got my notes here, so I'm just going to try to go through this. Preston Malloy started on a bump for the Green Wave. He's a 27 left-hander from Somerville. Real quick, first 1, 2, 3 inning up to 80. Didn't see a lot of velocity on Tuesday, but that was okay. We got a chance to see some good young players. Malloy got it going from Somerville on the bump that particular day. One of the guys that really impressed me quite a bit was a sophomore catcher, Parker Holiday. I'd seen him a little bit at the end of the summer. He's a name that I'd gotten somewhere during the summer, and he's behind a couple other good catchers at Somerville, but
Yeah.
certainly the future look. And we just mentioned Cole Messina just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's another guy that's just going to keep a good chain at that position and at that school. He threw well, didn't do as much offensively, but was a guy that certainly impressed with his ability to catch, block, and throw. That was a guy that stuck out a little bit. There was another player mentioned. Sometimes you just notice a guy walk up in a uniform and he looks like a player. Rodney Hanna is a junior outfielder, and he grounded out his first at bat. Got a good running time down the line. And then he had an at bat against one of those soft arms you're talking about. But he was taking some really tough borderline pitches, smokes a ball foul, stayed in there, took the tough 2-strike pitches, still hanging around, and then blistered one off the wall. He was a kid that just looks the part, cruised around the bases, and was interesting. The Knights, the guys from Stratford. There was an uncommitted senior that I liked. He made a real good running play in center field. Caden Skinner is his name. He played center for those guys. Made a good cruised under a pretty tough chance. A ball that a lot of times when you see high school games that gets down for extra
Right.
bases, he turned it into an out. So then, of course, I want to pay attention, watch this guy swing it. He smokes one to dead straightaway right, and just stayed on him the rest of the night. Dropped down a bunt. Definitely looks the part as well. Of note, we've got Dinger Central on our DP Central or Fall League Central. Jason Lee was the guy that went yard at Somerville, and then you've been there. I mean, it's a park
Yeah.
that if you look at the dimensions, it doesn't look like it looks like a hitter's park if you look at the dimensions that are noted on the wall. But a lot of balls don't get out of there, and so he ran one out of there on a night where a couple of other guys flirted with it. He was able to chase.
Anytime it's a home run, you can count it as a home run. Don't care if it's 300 feet or 500 feet, right?
He hit it far enough, and he got to touch all the bags.
Far enough.
That's right. So, that night it was good to see two teams that are certainly well coached, two teams that are no stranger, not only to the playoffs, but deep runs in the playoffs. They did it last year, and I'm sure they will again. Also, two good football program schools. So, there's some names that, of course, we would normally see during the spring that were not available for action. But again, the value of the fall league is next man up, and so the guys get their work in. And
Yep.
that's what I was able to see on Tuesday, so it was a valuable night for me. Also that on Tuesday. So what do you have from there?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to see a twin bill of sorts. Trojans 3 and Hawks 4 maybe. It was another set of young guys. And it was more of the same, it's a lot of young guys that you haven't seen before, and they're sort of kind of getting the rust off a little bit in week 1. And there wasn't a ton that, kind of stood out, just a lot of, normal ground outs and baseball being played. But one guy that kind of stood out to me was Preston Gatchell for Hanahan High School. I think he's a class of 29 as well. He just had a pretty good build on the mound. Kind of got some long arms and long legs and long levers that kind of come at you, and got up to about 73 miles an hour. So pretty solid for a guy his age, and he controlled the strike zone pretty well. So that was the one thing out of the early game that kind of stood out to me for that Hawks 4, I believe. And then the late show, it was Trojans 2 and Philip Simmons. And that was a lot more talent. Obviously these guys are a lot older, and these guys are playing the varsity game now. And obviously the Trojans team has a lot of guys that were coming off a state championship. So, they obviously know what they're doing, and Coach Spivey does a real good job with them. And go down my notes here. There's a couple guys that the first time I had seen them get extended action in areas that were different from what they would impact the high school. Dawson Beldner is a left-handed pitcher. Did some relief outings for the Trojans the past 2 years. He was impressive to me. He was leadoff hitter, played center field. He's looked to kind of gain a little bit of quickness maybe about him, and he was showing some good eye at the plate and really had a lot of contact and just kind of spraying balls all over the place. I think he went 2 for 3 in the game. And then also I had circled Colt Hernandez. I hadn't seen him pitch before. James Island, they got a lot of talent. So maybe it just was kind of one of those depth chart things. I'm not sure, but he got up to 80 on the gun in a quick 1-2-3 inning first, and had another good inning in the second. Kind of had a little funk to his fastball. And that was good to see from him. And then for Philip Simmons, man, they got a lot of talent too. I was very impressed with a couple of players. That both the Ebling brothers, Brian and Daniel Ebling, both are pretty talented players. In the middle of that lineup, they'll be a good 1-2 punch. Brian hit a double, I think, in his first at bat, and Daniel did the same thing in his second at bat. So they both went to the left center field gap for doubles. And Alex Romanski is a kid. He's a senior, class 26, and he didn't have a great outing. It was kind of all over the place with his fastball, but I really do like his stuff. He's got a very, very quick arm. He's got a little bit of sink, and his fastball gets up to 86. I mean, that's for what are we in September? Season's not going to come for another 5 or 6 months. I was pretty impressed with his velocity being there, and I think once he gets back into the motion and into the season, he'll fine tune his strike percentage. But I really like his stuff, and I think he'll be a really good arm for them going into the season in the next spring. It was a good game. There was back and forth a little bit. The Trojans team ended up coming out on top, but there's a lot to be excited for both teams. I thought both teams showed some good promise for week 1 of the DP Fall League. So,
Well, once again, you mentioned two programs that are very well coached. Each one of those programs have 3 teams in our league as well. Both James Island and Hanahan have 3 teams apiece. And so I'm sure you did see some good baseball, and you named some guys, several guys that were at the Palmetto games between Romanski, Daniel Ebling, the catcher. You mentioned Dawson Bellner, who's a big time. He got a lot of big outs for the Trojans down the stretch. He threw at the Palmetto games, and for that matter, you mentioned Hernandez. If I'm not mistaken, he was the winning pitcher in the clinching game
Yeah,
that won the
see,
title
that
for him
makes
in that
sense.
game 3 for the 5A championship. So some guys obviously you were able to see, in the fall setting that have big game experience. And so obviously if you've been in that program and if you've gotten on the field, you played in some big games because shoot, they're back-to-back state
Yeah.
champions, both in 4A and the highest level of 5A.
And I think, this is kinda what obviously, you've said it, you harped on it earlier, this is what the league is for, is to fill spots of guys that you've lost to graduation or whatever. This is the time to find out who fills those spots for the next season. So I think it's especially, like, for these high schools that are able to field 2 and 3 teams, it's really advantageous to do so because you get, all the more experience to see who can do what and who can not do what, and it's like a foolproof system to see what you got. So it's been good.
We couldn't agree with you more. That's why we do it, man. This is the 17th year we've had fall leagues. The biggest one we have is in the upstate, but the league down in the Lowcountry where you are and where I was this week has now I think ballooned to 45 teams. So we've known there's good talent down there for a long, long time. Fortunately, we're able to help the coaches service their players, and a lot of people don't realize that during the month of September, kids don't have access to their facilities unless they're in this league.
Yep.
Coaches don't have access to their players. Players don't have access to their coaches unless they're playing in DP league. So it allows them to practice throughout the week, as we talked about, and of course, and then we're able to cruise in and see the fruits of all that when they play one time. But it's an opportunity. It's a somewhat competitive setting, but the score is not the most important thing. They are shuttling guys in and out. And the emphasis really is on getting guys game experience, and it helps coaches evaluate, but it helps kids get reps. And it's a repetition sport, and they're getting a chance to do it with a little bit of pressure, but nothing like what they'll see in the spring. And he's trying to figure out who can handle that. And I saw a little bit of that on where I was on Wednesday night. Wednesday, I was at Hanahan High School, and Hanahan's just like we talked about, just another program that is always in the running for something, at their level. And Hudson Spravero, your alma mater, the Citadel is where he's committed to go. So he's a name we've known for a long time, and look forward to seeing him. There's a lot of other good players on that roster that I'll get to in just a moment, but he kind of stole the show a little bit, not with his first at-bat. His first at-bat, he whiffs on 3 pitches against the sophomore that I'm going to talk about in a moment as well. But with that, the night got better. He got hit by a pitch, just grazed by a pitch. He did not want to take his base. He vehemently,
Yeah.
but respectfully, tried to stay in the box, and I guess the umpire just really felt like he needed to uphold the rules and send him on to first. So I personally was hoping that the umpire would agree with Hudson, but he ended up having to take his base. But then he ran the bases aggressive. I really enjoyed watching him take bags, extra bases, alert on whether it be balls that just get scoot away off the mitt or dirt ball reads. That was an aspect of his game that I hadn't really noticed before. I know he's got juice, which he showed in his last 2 at-bats. The first one to right field, he flirted with a dinger, and then he ropes one down the left field line for his second double of the day and his 4th at-bat, so fourth plate appearance. He threw well from behind the plate. Nobody tried to run, so the only opportunities I got to see him shoot was from was on the last warm-up pitch of each inning, and he was sitting right in the 2-0 range with some bad pitches to handle, and he was still putting balls in the bag. He then took to the mound when the game was starting to kind of get out of control. Then they put him in on the bump, so my interest my antenna went right back up, and he sat pretty much 84, 85, but then 86, 88 in his second inning, quite a few 80s, and we've seen him up to 90 before. So obviously arm strength exists with Hunter Spravero. Like I said, an auspicious beginning to the night, but then he turned it around. Ended up being the person that we put the picture on the website. He ended up being our poster boy. So good night for him. I mentioned he punched in his first at-bat. It was against a sophomore, Antonio Hernandez from St. John's. I hadn't not seen St. John's play in a high school game, so I was glad to be able to see them play a little bit. And he was one of their better guys for sure. And he, he's a 2028, and he was sitting 80, 81, touching 82. Looks like the kid's got some arm strength.
Yeah.
I think there's probably more there now, and certainly with his age, you look at it, and there's probably going to be more there too. Didn't have the best outing that I'm sure he's ever had before, but he was able to get the big hitters in big situations. Then when they came up, he was able to have some success to get that. So it definitely shows some signs. The young player from St. John's. I want to go back to Hanahan for a moment. Just Chris Palm, that's a guy that had a lot of success for Hanahan. He was arguably their number 2 or 3, or sometimes they're 1. Pitched some big games for them last year during his sophomore campaign. He took the ball for the first 2 innings. and he's a bigger kid. I call him kind of a sturdy slash
Yeah.
burly guy, big body guy. That hopefully he'll continue to keep that intact as well, because big guys can get bigger if they're not careful with that. But he heavy fastball, and Devin, something I don't know that I've ever seen before. I can't document it. I'm not really sure. But for 2 innings, every single fastball that he threw was 84. I kept looking
Huh.
at my gun thinking maybe it had frozen or maybe I had clicked something that was locked on the last pitch, but the spin rates were
Yeah,
different.
that's interesting.
Was 84 miles an hour. Now I know that he'd been up to a little bit more than that towards the end of the summer, but that's what we got last night. I think there's a lot there. It wasn't to me. I felt like he had to scramble a little bit more than somebody that's had high school success against a lineup where I felt like a lot of guys he could have and should have probably overmatched. So I look forward to seeing him again and seeing if he's able to just really pound the mitt and just wipe out hitters and dispose of hitters that he's supposed to a little more quickly.
Mhm.
But he's a kid that obviously he's got college baseball in his future. And he's just, he's a 2027 Chris Palm from Hanahan.
All those hand-in-hand guys, man, Coach Hunter, he's got him right. You can tell there's a system-wide feel for pitching, and he does a good job with getting those guys prepped to go.
Well, his secret sauce too is he's got Bryce Flory over there, and got news yesterday, or actually I got it a while back, but Coach Hunter confirmed that he's now cancer free. He was able to ring the bell recently. Some of you guys may know Bryce Flory. If you don't know Bryce Flory, he's a native of Hanahan. Played pro ball, played in big leagues for quite a while. Had a good big league career going. Anyway, he's been coaching at Hanahan for a while since he's gotten back into town after his professional retirement. So he handles the pitcher. So you got Skylar Hunter with who was at Citadel, set a bunch of records there. He pitched in pro ball, and then you got Bryce Flory there too. But it was really good to see Bryce back out of the field
Yeah,
and certainly on the right side of what he's
absolutely.
been dealing with. So that's kind of what I got. And folks, as you're listening to this, we're just kind of highlighting some stuff. There's a whole lot more that both Devin wrote, I wrote on the website. It's thediamondprospects.com. Go read it. There's more. We also had a third person. Chipper Johnson was able to come down and hit some video for us and write up a little bit from Fort Dorchester and Ashley Ridge. So the Swamp Foxes and the Patriots hooked up on Tuesday night as well. All three of us were out that night. And so there's plenty of video from what he was able to see. When you hear Fort Dorchester, one of the first names you think of is Banks Wickersham. He was on full display as well, but there were some other guys that performed. Brody Tuttle from Ashley Ridge did well. The Coon boys, Coach Coon's sons, also performed well. Again, all that's on there. We have some pitchers that performed well also. So go check that out. That's all going to be a combined effort on our recap from the Lowcountry. I call it Lowcountry fishing just because, really, I mean, we're in the Lowcountry. I know a lot of people talk about fishing. For me, I don't have a lot of hobbies, to be honest with you, Devin. I hunt for players and I fish for players. That's how I roll. But in low country, obviously that's a big, and so that's what we were doing this week. We're out fishing for players, and we were able to find some guys, and there's a lot of value when we're able to get out and see guys that we didn't know, and really pique our interest. And I think
Absolutely.
looking at that list from the website and what you were able to see, and the other two of us were able to see. I think we're able to successfully do that this week in the Low Countries. So before we wrap here, any parting shots from anything else that you saw or anything else you want to mention from this week or preview going forward?
Nah, man, I think the one thing I want to say is let's go Cubs. I hope we play well in the playoffs.
Well, now for those who don't know, I'm a Cub fan, and so is he, and so we've got plenty of
Yeah.
background there, which is why I was not at a high school game on Monday night. I took my oldest son to see the Cubs in Atlanta, so we didn't get to raise the flag or pull the flag out of the bag, but did get a chance to get down on the field before the game. Shout out to Grant Holmes, who got us field passes down there. That was really cool to be able to go down there and meet a lot of the players and just basically not leaning on the batting cage, but you're right down there and
Yeah.
can feel the contact and watching those guys rock balls out of the ballpark. That's pretty cool. So yeah, hopefully the Cubs can turn it around. Hopefully real soon. As September down the stretch, here we go in Major League Baseball.
Yep.
And right around the corner is October and postseason baseballs. It's not far away. So if you're a Major League Baseball fan like the two of us are, anybody who listens to this is the best time of year, especially if your team is in it. And as a Cub fan, your team's not always in it. Isn't that right, Devin?
Yeah, we gotta be lucky when we can. We're
That's
lucky to have them this year, so it'll be fun. I'm excited.
That's exactly right. Well, just want to thank everybody for joining us. Devin, I appreciate you jumping in with me and being able to kind of chronicle what you were able to see. And I know you're going to be out pounding the pavement all fall, banging around down there and just seeing as much as you can. A lot of teams, a lot of players, but I know you'll be out there working for us. And
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that. And so from there, we'll go ahead and wind down. Just want to remind everybody that our fall showcase information is on our website. As we recap the low country here on this show, there's plenty more on the website, also from the upstate, also from the Greater Rock Hill League. Plenty of information coming out of those from our commissioners and other folks that we had on the road, pointing radar guns and stopwatches and just whatever we were able to scribble down on our clipboards. We put that on the website for you as well. So just want to thank everybody for joining us. Wish you guys a really awesome weekend wherever you may be going, and look forward to joining you again next week. And maybe we'll see you out at the ballpark. If you do, make sure you come up and speak to us. And thank you for joining the Bullpen Show. We'll see you next time.